The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nick Zulovich of Auto Remarketing. In today's webinar, Winning in the Age of Gen Y, we're going to learn more about how Mac Systems has researched and analyzed emerging online behavior and decision-making of today's online car shopper. Today's presenter is Patrick McMullen, the Vice President at Mac Systems. But before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. Please make sure you've dialed in using the phone number provided in your communication email or are able to listen via your PC speakers. We are recording today's webinar, and we'll make that recording and available to you in the coming days. You will be in listen-only mode for this webinar, but we will reserve some time after Patrick's presentation for a question and answer session. You can submit your questions at any time through the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel. If we aren't able to get to your question today, don't worry. We'll forward that on to Patrick and the team at Mac Systems so they can respond back to you directly via email. Lastly, if you have any difficulty during the webinar, please click on the hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel to alert a member of the team. And now I'd like to introduce Patrick McMullen. An award-winning presenter, Patrick brings more than a decade's worth of management experience in the automotive industry and has broad knowledge and industry expertise in the pre-owned and digital online operations. He came to Mac Systems after successful careers at both Enterprise Rent-A-Car and CarMax. So let's learn more about winning in the age of Gen Y with Patrick McMullen. Patrick, the webinar is now yours.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. There you go. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As Nick said, we are going to discuss winning the age of Gen Y. And we did a research project here with our Untitled Labs team, which we're going to dive in deep and discuss today. So let's go ahead and get started. And as Nick said, we'll leave plenty of time at the end for any questions that you may have. So please just submit those questions. And if we don't get to them today, I'll be more than happy to either call you or email you back with and follow up with any additional answers you may need. So what are we going to discuss today? Well, we're going to discuss the evolution of young people's interest in cars and how that's changed over time with technology. We're going to talk about an overview of a consumer's digital decision journey process and what that looks like. We're going to discuss the role of mobile, what devices consumers use, how they use it, and what you can do as dealers to leverage the playing field with these internet-savvy consumers. And lastly, how dealers can increase their online conversion through digital performance management. Sorry, just having some technical. There we go. So we want to set the stage and just kind of discuss with Gen Ys and how they're in the driver's seat. Why is that important to you as dealers? So as of 2012, Gen Y accounts for 40% of the car buying population, which consists of 75 million people. So that's roughly 20% of the U.S. population. And 54% of them say that they anticipate replacing their vehicle in the next 2 years. So that's a lot of consumers that are entering the marketplace here in the next 2 years, or actually last year and this year. So 54% of that 75 million intend on purchasing a vehicle. Nick, can you see my screen okay?
We can hear you just fine. It seems as if the slide changes are a little bit delayed, so perhaps might have to hit the button twice or give a little time to make sure that the screen can refresh.
Okay. And which screen do you see right now?
We see the bullet points that end with the 54% say they anticipate replacing their vehicle in the next 2 years.
Okay. Seems like we're having a little delay on the internet. That's okay. We can send out this presentation if needed. Nick, I'm going to try to change computers. If you can throw it over to the other person that's on my side, I'm going to try to use her computer.
Okay, great.
Sorry, folks, for this. As we're sitting here talking about technology, technology is failing me. Okay, so Nick, can you see it says Gen Y in the driver's seat?
That's correct.
All right, perfect, perfect. So as we move along, cars were once a cool technology that young people loved. I remember my father telling me stories of going to the car dealership with his dad to see the newest makes and models. And now, in the information age, it's introduced new things for young people to obsess over. You know, I'm sure you see this in the town that you live in. When the newest Apple device comes out or Android device, there's lines outside of Apple stores and retailers to get these devices because these are things that young people are obsessing over now. Can you put that? Sorry, Nick. Now this computer doesn't want to go. Okay. So as we see here, younger people today start driving later and later. And this is evident here. You can see on this graph, back in 1983, when young people, the average age of 16-year-olds that got their driver's license was almost half the population. Now that's down to around 30%. And we see this in big cities as well, where people are driving less and less. In large cities, public transportation has doubled between 2001 and 2009 between these Gen Yers that are 16 to 34 years old in age. And car sharing programs are becoming more and more frequent in these cities as well. So much so that Avis Budget just bought Zipcar, which is very large in Chicago where I live, for $500 million in cash. And I see that other rental car agencies such as Enterprise and Hertz are starting to go to a more hourly rate to compete with this type of new business model. So let's talk about what we did. Our Incessant Labs team did something that we call the Digital Decision Journey Research Project. And what we did was we focused on people between the ages of 25 and 39 years old that were late model pre-owned intenders who started their online shopping process without a commitment to a specific brand or model. So that's really important. These people that we monitored, they didn't have anything in mind. So we were able to get them from a clean perspective to see exactly what they did during their research project to end up buying a vehicle. And we did something called ethnographic research, where we followed these people through their online journey. So ethnographic, think of fly on the wall. We've all said at one time, I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that meeting or that room. Well, that's what we did. We didn't put trackable software on their computer. We literally had them videotape themselves and watched how they searched online. And then we went back and we asked them, why did you do that? Why did you go to this spot? Why did you make that decision? And I'm going to share with you some of those findings that we did. We also did intercept studies, where we surveyed people leaving dealerships, and we asked them a series of questions. Why did you buy from this dealership? What was it attracted you to this car? Why buy now? And I'm going to share some of those findings with you as well. One thing that we did find was people are less brand loyal across all ages. 50% of all automotive internet users are open to any brand at the outset of their shopping process. So what we found was, this was actually through J.D. Powers, that 50% are open to buy anything at the get-go. And with Gen Yers, this increases to 54%. So they come in and they're not predisposed to a Chevy or a Toyota or a Honda. They're open across all brands. So what was the biggest influence that made these people purchase? Well, what we found was 49% made their purchase decision based upon something they learned online. 21% said it was something that their friends or family member enticed them into buying a particular vehicle. 17% said it was the dealer. And 13% said they had pre-existing knowledge of that make or model, and that made them purchase the vehicle. Now, just some key factors to think about here is the Gen Y influence on family and friends. So 70% of them say they are likely to sway a friend's vehicle purchase decision. 61% say they have a direct influence over their parents' final purchase decision. And 89% ask their friends for their opinion, and 80% say they have a big influence over that decision of their friend. So they are definitely asking and not afraid to give their opinions about what people should buy. And we'll see later on in the presentation with service, if they have a bad service experience, they're not likely to come back, not just to your dealership, but to your brand overall. So the traditional buying funnel that we're all used to, what we found during our research project is that this is actually dead. And it looks more like this. It's more circular in nature. So you have the initial consideration set, and we're going to talk about how cars end up in that initial consideration set. Then you have something that we call active evaluation, where they're online, they're doing research, and they're looking at vehicles, and they're looking at consumer reports about these vehicles. They still haven't test drove yet. They're doing their online test drive. And in this phase, there's actually more vehicles that get added to it, and we're going to talk about why and how. And then there's something that hits the trigger, hits the buyer's trigger, where brings them to your dealership for that purchase phase. Now, there's two other ways that they can get from initial consideration set to that purchase phase, which is called the loyalty loop and ownership phase. We're not going to talk about those today, just for time's sake, but we are going to spend a lot of time on this active evaluation set. So as a consumer comes out of their initial consideration set, they usually have about 4 vehicles in mind that they're going to do research on, 3.8 to be precise. And brands in this set can be up to 3 times more likely to be purchased. So if you start out in a consumer's initial consideration set, you have 3 times more likely chance of them buying that vehicle. What are the primary drivers of which vehicles end up in that initial consideration set? Well, personal experience and word of mouth, or my friend owns one. So we saw that earlier with the Gen Y slide, where it's word of mouth, very active in asking for opinions. And brand reputation plays a huge role as well. Toyota and Honda, great perceived quality. So they end up in these initial consideration sets very often. So let's dive into our data, and let's look at, I'm going to introduce you to 2 people. The first one is Trish, and we're going to go through her initial consideration set and vehicles that ended up, that she ended up doing research on. So just a little backstory on Trish. She lives with her fiance and 3 children in suburban Chicago. She's 28 years old, and she's a receptionist by trade. Her mission, she is looking for a vehicle that seats 5, is comfortable, must feel spacious, and is safe. Now, that mission, if you think about all the cars that are on your lot right now, or any car you've driven, that mission could fit a bunch of different vehicles, right? Well, what did she have in mind? Well, in her initial consideration set, she had an Acura MDX, a Kia sedan, and a Toyota sedan or crossover. So a little bit over the board, or all over the board. Now, why did she pick those vehicles? Well, she currently has a 2003 Kia Spectra, and she liked Toyota and Kia because of their reliability. So back to that perceived quality. She will not consider a Ford due to bad past experience. So for all the Ford dealers, or anybody with a Ford on their lot in Chicago, Trish isn't going to be your customer anytime soon. Now, let me introduce you to Sarah. So Sarah lives in LA. She's engaged. She's 26 years old, and she's a photographer. Her mission, she is looking for a vehicle that is reliable, good-looking. She lives in LA, so it's got to be a good-looking car, and something that gets good gas mileage. So that's very important these days for everyone. So in her initial consideration set, unlike Trish that was kind of all across the board, hers was a Honda Civic, Hyundai sedan, and a Toyota Corolla sedan. So she stayed more in that mid-sized 4-door sedan area, where Trish had a SUV and some sedans and some crossovers. Now, what we found during this during the initial consideration set is that traditional upper funnel activity, as far as reading articles, researching the web, we didn't find that to be typical user behavior. What we did find, though, however, is they went straight to the VIN listing. So they went straight online, and they started shopping the inventory. They started looking at the vehicles online, the VIN-specific online inventory listings. And some of the sites that they used, well, CarMax came up a lot, Cars.com, Craigslist, and AutoTrader. And one thing to note is these searches were educational rather than a predictor of purchase. So it was really rare for someone to visit a dealership after these initial set of searches. So they didn't take these 4 vehicles, find a car, and get in their current car and drive to your dealership. So as a dealer, how can you end up in their initial consideration set? Well, unfortunately, dealers and manufacturers have limited influence on this initial consideration set for these buyers. The key is to focus on having great online inventory on all your sites across the internet. And most importantly, listings are educational and point out your differentiators, not only between you and your competitor, but between your car and the other cars that are online. We're going to talk about that a little bit further in the presentation. Some things that you can do from an operational standpoint to make sure that your listings are educational and point out differentiators. And you got to make sure that your inventory stands out from the crowd. So if you have a Chevy Tahoe on your lot right now, and it's on AutoTrader or Cars.com or any site across the web, how does your vehicle stand out from the rest of the pack, the rest of the herd out there? So during this phase, this active evaluation phase where they're doing research and gathering data, the number of brands can actually expand rather than narrow. So it's unlikely that they throw vehicles out of this phase. They actually add more to it. And the average shopper adds about 2.2 brands to their initial 3.8. So they end up, somewhere around 6 when it's all said and done. And how do they pick these additional cars? Well, they're using things such as internet reviews, word-of-mouth recommendations from friends and family. So that came up again. That was really really hot topic with Gen Yers. In-store interactions and recollections of past experiences. Product marketing or incentives. And education from their online experience. So education that they learn from shopping online. So let's go back to Sarah. So I'm going to walk you through what Sarah did during her active evaluation phase. So once again, Sarah, she lives in Los Angeles. Her search time was 54 minutes. So from the time she sat down to the time she closed her computer, it took up almost an hour. Now, remember, her initial consideration set were Honda Civics, Hyundai sedans, and Toyota Corollas. So first thing that she did was she went on Google, and she searched for whatever reason, best SUV. So her initial consideration set was all sedans. But the first thing that she did during this active evaluation phase was look for SUVs. She found an article on U.S. News World Report that listed top-selling cars, and she clicked on the Honda Fit. And then she came back to the search engine, typed in 2011 best used cars. She found Edmunds.com 2011 used best car bets, looked into the Ford Fiesta and Ford Focus, and then she searched just generically best used cars, Consumer Reports, and she found Consumer Reports and the reliability ratings. So from there, she went straight to the VIN-specific listings, and she looked at Honda Fits, she looked at Ford Fiestas, she looked at Ford Focuses. So notice the 3 vehicles that came into her mind initially that she was interested in. When she actually went online and she started looking at VIN-specific listings, she didn't even look at those cars. She looked at the other ones that she found during her active evaluation phase. So now she has 3 more vehicles to consider into this consideration set. Now let's take a look at Trish and see what she did. Well, in her initial consideration set, if you remember, she had the Acura MDX, the Kia sedan, and the Toyota sedan and crossovers. Now, kind of all across the board. So when she went online, she went straight to CarMax. She literally spent about 30 seconds on Google and went to CarMax. And there she expanded her search on CarMax. They have a pretty intuitive site that helps consumers find vehicles that fit their needs. So that's what she did. She typed in her price range that she can afford, and some things that she needs to fit her mission. And it came back with a Buick LaCrosse, Chrysler Sebring, and a 2010 Dodge Avenger, and a Kia Sorento. So one thing to note here is the Acura was thrown out because when she got onto the web, she liked them because they're good-looking vehicles, but she realized that it was outside of her purchase phase because she couldn't afford it. So Mojo Motors did a study that actually reinforces this expanded consideration set. So they found that Civic buyers searched 60 Honda Civics, but also they searched 100 Honda Accords and 100 Nissan Altimas before they went and bought that Civic. So some of the things there to think about, if you're one of these manufacturers, if you're using data like this to stock your lot, if you're using click data to stock your lot based upon what people are searching for, sometimes it can be misleading. Because in the second example here, consumers who purchased a Honda CR-V actually viewed more RAV4s and Toyota Highlanders, but they actually bought the CR-V. And for whatever reason, Volkswagen Jetta buyers searched more Jettas than anything else during their search. So a couple of surprising insights that we found during this research project. The top reason why consumers view photos of pre-owned vehicles, what we found was they viewed the photos not to see quality, but actually see if the options and packages that you put in your description were actually on the vehicle. So in your description, if it says that it has navigation or a sunroof or leather seating, they're actually clicking into the cars to see if it had this actual information. And the other thing is we found that during these VIN-specific views on AutoTrader and Cars.com and dealer websites, they were actually going out and going to the OEM website in the middle of viewing these pre-owned listings. So when we asked them, we said, why are you going to the manufacturer when you're looking at a specific car? The answer was surprising. They actually said that they were going to try to figure out what trim level it was because the information in this VIN-specific ad didn't provide that. So I always use the example with our customer base when we're giving seminars is think of my mom or my sister. They don't know, they may be in the market for a Honda Accord, but they don't know what an EXL is. They don't know what a EX is. So there's all these different trims out there. And if we as dealers aren't educating, making our listings educational in nature and explaining what these cars come with these different packages, then we're doing a disservice to ourselves. So let's talk about the trigger. So how do we land this plane? Think of what happens to actually draw somebody into the dealership. Well, there's three things. The consumer connects with your online listing, causing them to visit your dealership. So there's something in your listing that causes them to make that jump and visit your dealership. The consumer visits your dealership to physically see and test drive the specific make or model and to continue the research of their consideration set. And lastly, there's some sort of external event that causes urgency, such as, I had an accident. I need to go buy a new car, or a long commute to work. I just recently moved from the city to the suburbs in Chicago, so I stopped taking public transportation and I had to buy a car. So how can you, as dealers, be added to this active evaluation set? Once again, you got to create robust listings. Ensure that your ads are easy to scan and capture the key takeaways. So make sure in your ad it says, it's easily scannable like this one is, and it answers these questions. Is this the right car for me? Am I buying a lemon? Is this a fair price? Why is this car better than all the others I've seen online? And why should I buy from this dealer? So if your ads don't look like this currently, if your online listings aren't scannable like this and don't answer all these questions, please call us. We can help. So things you need to be aware of when a customer stops shopping your virtual lot and starts shopping your physical lot. So these next three slides are pretty eye-opening. This was actually from a Deloitte automotive study this year. And what they found was 65% of Gen Y consumers would rather purchase a car without negotiating with a salesperson. So 65% of this generation doesn't want to talk to your salesperson and doesn't want to negotiate with them. And one of the reasons being is Gallup did a study where they asked trust in professions. So what are the professions that people across the board, not just Gen Yers, but people across the board trust the most? Well, nurses, engineers, and doctors came up, top 3. If we look at the bottom 3, advertising people, members of Congress, and car salespeople at 8%. So 65% of Gen Yers don't want to speak to a salesperson because from what we can tell, they don't trust them. So in your ad descriptions or when that customer comes onto your lot, what are you doing? Ask yourself that question. What are you doing to build trust with that customer? And then 52% of Gen Yers said that a bad experience with a dealership would cause them never to consider that brand again. So I said that earlier. It's not that they just won't consider your dealership again. They won't consider your brand at all. So all your other brand or all your other dealerships with that brand are out of the question as well. So let's shift gears for a moment and talk about mobile. I know this is hot in the dealerships right now. Every dealership I go into, they're always asking what can they do to do better on mobile sites. So one thing to point out is, I apologize. One thing to point out is there's many more Android devices in the U.S. today than Apple, but commerce on web traffic is biggest upon or with iPads. So what are people using these different devices for? Well, on desktops and laptops, they're using it for searching and evaluating and comparing vehicles, especially vehicles and their listings. Tablets, if you have an iPad at your dealership or at your house, I'm sure you've done this before. It's called couch commerce, where you're watching TV and you're also searching the web on your iPad and you're buying something. So we see that a lot on tablets. So they use tablets to review listings of specific vehicles, but with an emphasis on images and videos and reviews. And then smartphones, if you see somebody using your smartphone on the lot, it's usually because they're comparing your price or researching the models when they're at your dealership. Or prior to coming to your dealership, it's usually used to find information about the dealer to contact them. So whether it be your address or your telephone number. Now the big takeaway here is, have you searched for vehicles on your own website with using an iPad? So if the majority of people are searching your site on a mobile device from an iPad, have you done it? So I was on a dealer site the other day, and it was very hard to navigate around because it wasn't very mobile friendly. So he's actually in the process of changing that right now. So what is that customer experience? What is that user interface experience when somebody searches your lot? I would do that. I would do that today if you haven't done so already. So another thing we found too was when mobile is used at the dealership by the consumer, 44% of 18 to 35-year-olds use mobile devices to get price or information at the dealership versus 27% in all other age groups. So this younger generation, they're using their smartphones more and more. When I commute to work every single day on the train, nobody talks to each other anymore. Everybody's on their smartphones or iPads, heads down, texting, gaming, doing whatever they're doing, but they're not talking to each other. And what we found was Cars.com actually did a study that backs that up, where it says over close to 60% of people use their mobile phone for pricing information. So some key takeaways for mobile. So iPads matter more than smartphones when shopping online. And smartphones matter, but mostly for finding and contacting your dealership for a price comparison. So like I said, make sure that you are searching your own website to make sure that it's mobile friendly, to make sure that it's the user interface from an iPad is friendly. So how can you as dealers succeed? Well, digital performance management. So if you don't have a digital performance management system to help you, please pay attention here. So there's 3 things to digital performance management that you need to keep in mind. You got to make sure that you have compelling digital inventory. You got to also make sure that you have disciplined online execution with that inventory. And then you got to start paying for performance instead of paying for placement. That's a concept we'll dive in here in just a second. But firstly, with the compelling digital inventory, all of this will lead to increased online conversions, and that's what everybody's looking for. Everybody's looking for more leads, more sales, and to do that, you have to do these 3 things inside this pyramid. So if you have a window sticker that looks like this on your lot today, more than likely your ads online are probably reflective of your window sticker. And the problem is the people that are providing this for you and getting your vehicles online, they don't do a good job of making your ads educational and making them scannable and providing all those answers that consumers are looking for. So we see things like this a lot. A typical vehicle ad out there online where it just has power steering, power door locks, power windows, power, power, power. They're just generic VIN explosions. Or we see ads like this these days where it's cheesy dealer speak. So clean you can eat off the floor mats. Be the ultimate chick magnet in this sweet black Mustang. So this is great if we were selling cars to each other as automotive professionals, but we're not. We're trying to sell, once again, to my mom, my sister. So this type of language in your ad isn't going to attract somebody like that. Because it's all about, if they don't buy your ad, they won't buy your car. So you can see here the difference in these 2 vehicles. You're paying a lot of money to be online on these different third-party sites. Go ahead and utilize those top 250 characters to draw somebody into your ad, to get them to click and learn more, and then print a map to your dealership or pick up the phone and call you. Increase your lead conversion, but it starts with your ad. It starts with how do you look online. Because we call this consumer optimization. So just as a search engine optimization makes it more likely that a search engine chooses your web page, consumer optimization makes it more likely that a consumer chooses your online vehicle ad over your competitors. So let's talk about that a little bit more. How do we help you with that? Well, you got to stand out from the crowd. You got to create purple cows. So think of a herd of cows driving down the street through Wisconsin, and you see a herd of cows. Well, it's if you saw a purple cow standing out, you'd probably pull over the car, take pictures of it, tweet it, Facebook it, put it all out there. So how do you stand out from the rest of the cars online? Think of all the vehicles online as a herd of cows. How do you make your cars purple? How do you make your cars a purple cow? Well, use a system like ours that virtually discovers everything about your car from across the internet. So Carfax One Owner, if any awards or accolades have ever been said about that vehicle, make sure it's in there. Price comparisons, how you compare to the quote-unquote experts with Kelley Blue Book and NADA. Certified information is huge. If you're going to be charging a premium for your vehicle because it's certified, make sure that you have certification information in that ad to talk about why your car's worth more. You also want to make sure that you have the manufacturer packages and equipment from when it was a new car. Your OEM, your manufacturer, spends millions and millions of dollars a year in advertising to talk about these cool technologies that are in these vehicles. But unfortunately, when they come back to our lot, we put them out there as used cars. We basically strip all that away, and we just put things like AM/FM stereo or power door locks or like that cheesy ad that we saw before. So if you're a BMW dealer, make sure that it automatically identifies BMW technology package, cold weather package, sport package. Make sure you're adding these to your ad descriptions. So no more AM/FM stereo on your ads. Instead, Harman Kardon 12-speaker surround sound. So that's much more attractive to a consumer than just AM/FM stereo. That builds value in the vehicle, builds value in your price. And if we think back for a couple slides ago, one of the least trusted professions is car salesman. If you can add that value in your vehicle and add that value in your price and why it's a fair price, remember, they don't want to negotiate. They just want to feel like they're getting a fair price. You can do that with ads like this that answer those questions like we talked about before. This is going to help you build value not only in your car, in your price, but in your dealership and in that consumer buying process. So highly recommend, if your ads don't look like this, do a test today. When we hang up off this call, go mystery shop yourself on AutoTrader, on Cars.com, on your dealer website, and see how you look through the eyes of a consumer. If my mom, my sister were shopping for a car and they came across yours, would you convert them? Would they click into your ad? Would they make some sort of call to action to contact you? And then you got to distribute this information across the web. So Max does all that, or can do all that for you. So let's switch gears for a second and talk about disciplined online execution and what that means. So currently now, think to yourself, how do you manage your gaps in your online execution? How do you know which vehicles don't have a description? Which vehicles have no photos? Which vehicles have no price? Are you currently monitoring this today with quick and easy technology to alert you to these vehicles so you can go back and you can fix the issues? So make sure you have a system that shows you vehicles that aren't online, vehicles that don't have a price, that don't have those descriptions, that don't have photos. Make sure you have a system that shows you ad quality alerts. So make sure that your current provider that gets your cars online is showing you low online activity, vehicles that don't have packages. So if you're a BMW dealership, go back to that BMW cold weather package or the technology package. Why are we not putting those on each vehicle that's online? Low photos or no Carfax information. Make sure that your system is currently today alerting you to those gaps in your inventory so you can manage this not only at the store, but if you're part of a group, make sure you're managing this from a group level as well. Make sure that you have these alerts one place quick and easily to see a 30,000-foot view of all your vehicles online and which ones need special attention, and then you can dive straight into the store level to actually fix that and manage your managers or manage your team to actually get this accomplished and get this done. So the last thing here is paying for performance. So I travel the country a lot. I talk to a lot of dealers across the country, and there's a movement kind of going on in the industry right now where they feel like they're overpaying some vendors for putting their vehicles online and not adding value to that. I'm hearing that more and more across the country as I go to more dealerships. So do you identify? So I'll read these out to you. I feel as if my third-party vendors pressure me into spending more because if I don't, my competitor will down the street. Or how about, I'm not sure if my online spend is worth it anymore. Does anybody relate to that? Next, I don't think I'm getting the same return from the amount of money I'm spending on that online advertising. And lastly, my third-party vendor seems to always have their hands out, but no evidence on why I should spend more. So if you relate with any of these, I feel for you. So you need to stop paying without performance. You need to make sure that you stop paying for placement and you start paying for performance. So make sure that you have your current provider that gets your vehicles online. Make sure they not only create compelling online inventory for you, ad descriptions, make sure that they give you tools to manage your online execution, to find those gaps in your inventory and help you manage that. But also make sure that they give you information to turn the tables and have a conversation about what your vendor is actually doing for you versus what you're doing for the vendor. So make sure that you have a system that will show you what you're paying for cost per impression, or VDP. Make sure you have a vendor that's alerting you to how many leads you're getting from each one of your providers, and also what is that costing you, but more importantly, what is the top performing benchmark? So what are your peers paying versus what you're paying for? So this guy, for example, is paying almost $100 more than the average person for a direct lead. Make sure you have a system that shows you trends. Make sure you're tracking this if you do it yourself. So if you go up a package on AutoTrader, or you go down a package, or you go up a package on Cars or down a package, make sure that you're tracking from the day that you did that, month over month, Did your VDPs go up or down? Did your cost per impression go up or down? Did your direct leads go up or down? Did your cost per direct lead go up or down? Because this is going to help you justify that decision, but it's also going to help you make further decisions in the future. Time to market is really big right now. A lot of dealers have had or are having issues with getting their vehicles online promptly with an ad description and a photo. So make sure that you're tracking this, and make sure you know how long it takes you from the time that vehicle enters your system to the time that it's online with an ad and with a photo. We've consulted a lot of dealers and helped them bring this down, this time to market, and it actually increases more turn throughout the year for their inventory. So this is a huge thing that if you're not paying attention to as of today, start looking at it and dive into the system that you're currently using and see if they provide this for you. And if they do, use it and see what you can do to cut that time to market in half. If you don't, find one that does. And ask yourself, are you getting the most traffic for every dollar you spend on other forums of advertising, SEO, SEM? Are you getting every dollar out of that spend that you can? And how do you know? How do you know? Do you have somebody doing it for you? Are you doing it yourself? Are you using some sort of analytics tool? But make sure that you're tracking all that money that you're spending outside of the online world. Is that working? So if you use TV or radio or newsprint, how do you know how people are getting to you? If you go up thousands of dollars on your radio spend, how do you know if that's working? Make sure you track that. Make sure you see, is my name prevalent out there? Do people know my website? Are people coming direct to my website through direct traffic, or is it through organic? If you use AdWords, how do you know if that's actually working? So make sure you have a system that helps you with that. And then look at those top search keywords and look at how are people finding you online. If you're paying a ton of money for SEO and you're not winning terms such as BMW Chicago or 3 Series Chicago, something like that, make sure that you check that on a weekly basis. And as you're deciding on where to spend your money, use this as evidence to help you make those decisions. So once again, if you're not doing it now today, make sure that you have compelling digital inventory. So make sure those ads are robust, scannable, educational in nature. Make sure you're doing disciplined online execution to help find those gaps in your inventory and fix them before they become an issue and you have aged inventory out there. And start paying for performance instead of paying for placement with your online vendors. So Nick, that's all I got. If anybody has any questions, we'd be more than happy to dive into that now.
Excellent presentation, Patrick. A lot of great information there, and just a reminder that we are recording today's session, so keep watch of your inbox for a link to that recording that you can go back and review some of the material that Patrick has shared today with other people at your store or in a strategy meeting of how to improve some of these points that Patrick raised, and definitely Patrick wanted to start off by a point that certainly got my attention, and it seemed to get some of the attention of the folks who are joining us. The credibility and trustworthy graphic that you had shared that showed how low the dealership salesperson fell in that 8 to 10% range in the trustworthy departments. Just what was kind of Mac Systems' reaction to that? What have been some other reactions that you've heard to that, and what's kind of a strategy going forward if this particular demographic is quite apprehensive with dealing with salespeople? How should dealerships try to mend that relationship to have a good working situation with this demographic?
Yeah, sure. Great question. And before I answer that, I just want to apologize to everybody for the technical difficulties we had in the beginning. But we seem to have weathered the storm, so appreciate you, Nick, helping us out there. So great question. So that study was from a Gallup poll, and that was across, just to be clear, that wasn't just Gen Y population, that was all age groups that they polled. And I was surprised to see that it was that low. I knew it wouldn't be at the top of the list over doctors and nurses, but I didn't think it would be that low. So I was actually kind of surprised by that. So going forward, I think providing value. So if you remember the slide before that, it said 65% of Gen Y, they didn't want to negotiate with the salesperson. And I think that's one of the reasons why CarMax is successful, is because of the no hassle. Now, I'm not saying that you change your dealership approach to be like CarMax, because that was very difficult to do. But however, building value not only in the vehicle online, because that's where they're shopping you. When they show up to your lot, I think the average stat now is when a consumer buys a car, they visit on average 1.5 dealerships. So when they show up to your lot, they're actually yours to lose, right? Because if you don't sell them, the next guy's going to. Or maybe the guy before you actually failed and now they're at your lot. So they know what they want. And I think the thing is they have so much time to do this research that when they show up to your lot, the Joe, the customer, actually knows more than the pro, which is your salesperson, about these vehicles. So I think having robust online descriptions to help build value in that vehicle, but as importantly, build value in your price. So if you are $3,000 above average than the average dealer out there, but you have low miles, you're certified, you have things to justify that. As car professionals, we know that to each other. We know that low mile per year vehicles can demand a lot more revenue, but that consumer may not see that. So evidence inside your ad to make sure that you're building that value not only in your car but in your price, but then transform that when that customer is on your lot, having sales tools like we have that actually print these out, these sellable sheets, to actually build the value with the customer, so it doesn't become a negotiation play. It's more, you're just building that value with that consumer.
Excellent points, Patrick. And if you have a question for today's presenter, Patrick McMullen with Max Systems, please use the questions box that's on the GoToWebinar control panel here. And another question from a dealer, Patrick, about processes and execution. Dealers wondering about what have other dealers done to create a process that's that can have customized descriptions, but show what the dealership has done to the vehicle, whether it's new tires, new brakes, other recon that they've done to the vehicle. Dealers wondering that this can be a challenging part to streamline that. What's been an avenue that you've seen dealers use to highlight what maybe recon they've done to the vehicles?
Sure. So, some of the practices I've seen in the past are, having a kind of a brag book on each car, and when that vehicle is traded, it works a lot better on trades. But when that vehicle is traded in, kind of having the salesperson capture a story on the previous owner, and then those go into the brag book for the salespeople that are going to be selling that vehicle. Also, doing daily walkarounds, trade walks with your sales team to educate them, so when they're talking to these customers, either on the phone or when they show up in person at the dealership, they have more information and knowledge about the car. But to win online, it's pretty hard to virtually find everything about that vehicle. Who can name the top-selling car in 2009? Nobody knows that off the top of their head. So if you were to write ads like we produce for every single vehicle on your lot, it'd be near impossible. It'd be a three-person job, full-time job to do that, to keep up with that. So I think you need to have a system in place. If you're writing them manually now, you're writing your ad descriptions manually now, I think you need to look at how do you compare versus your competition online, and also what is that time suck. And then from there, use a system like Max to help you get 98% of the way there. Then if you want to add additional information like service tier, or it's a history record or whatever, you can manually add that in. So make sure that if you're not doing that now, that you start.
Excellent recommendations, Patrick. Thank you. Again, if you have a question, please use the questions box on the webinar control panel there. You've talked about having a complete listing, and perhaps this is a practice that's going away, Patrick, especially in this particular demographic where the listing might have an item that says call for the price or email for the price. Is that a practice that's kind of going away with the advent of how this particular demographic is behaving, or is that a strategy that you've seen dealerships still utilize to try to generate that lead?
Yeah, great question. It's a strategy that we still see sometimes out there in the market. We wouldn't recommend it because with this demographic, and not just the Gen Ys, but Gen Xers and baby boomers, with how easy it is to get this information, how easy it is for the consumer to gather this information. If you don't have a price in your car, you might as well just have the highest price. You'd have a better chance of winning the customer that way. But think about it. All these consumers are looking for value in the vehicle and value in your price. So if you don't have a price, they're probably just going to skip right over you. Especially if it's a commodity car where there's a ton of them online and there's nothing special about your car, you're probably not getting phone calls on it. So if you're using that technique, I would stray away from it and use a tool to help you price accordingly to the market.
Excellent, Patrick. Excellent. Again, if you have a question for Patrick today, please use the questions box on the control panel, and maybe a point to revisit, Patrick. You made it toward the end of your presentation about measuring that proof of return on investment. Could just recap again how critical that stage is to show that so dealers can get the most of their ad spend online?
Sure. Great question. So what we see on average is that one of the biggest spends at the dealership is on their online marketing. So whether that's getting their cars online to the third-party sites that host these vehicles, I see dealers paying $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year just to kind of be out there, just so people can find them. And if you're not managing that return on investment, I just think it's a poor business practice. If you're paying a particular vendor $10,000 a month and you're only seeing 20, 25 leads come in, is that a good spend of your money? And we're not saying that you need to go dark on any of these sites, but if you're not tweaking and reallocating some of that spend to see if other things work. So instead of spending $10,000 a month on one site, maybe you go down a package to $8,000 and you take that additional $2,000 in budget and you reallocate it to other things like Google AdWords or to another vendor. So sometimes we see customers go from $10,000 to $12,000 a month on particular vendors, and they really see a lift. So it's all about testing and iterating and finding what works best for your market and your dealership, but monitoring that on a weekly, monthly basis when you have to make your online budget decisions. Make sure that you have the evidence behind that to back up your decision versus just blindly throwing money to the wind.
Excellent, excellent, Patrick. And there is the contact information there on the screen. If you have a question that's specific about your store, certainly Patrick and the team would welcome that question either via email or by phone. So there's their information there. And our closing moments here, Patrick, we're dead ahead of the fourth quarter of the year. It's amazing how quickly time goes. Perhaps maybe what would be one or two recommendations that you might give to a dealership that's in a metro market and then maybe a store that's in a more rural setting? what would be top 1 or 2 recommendations you would give to a store that they should try to implement before the end of the year to have the 2013 finish strong and to have some good momentum going into next year?
Sure. I would actually give the same advice to both stores, and it would be threefold. First, we keep harping on this point, but I think it's so important. When we get off the phone today, go straight online and do a mystery shop of your dealership. So do it a few ways. Search, if you're on AutoTrader and Cars.com, search for your vehicles. How do you show up? How do you look? How do your ads look compared to everybody else? Take off your dealership glasses for a second and look through the veins of a consumer. I said my mom, my sister before. Think about it from a consumer standpoint. How do you look? And if you don't look good, do something about your ads. Whether you want to write them yourself or fire the current provider that you're using and find somebody like us that can make them attractable and make them educational and attract more customers. Secondly, I think you got to look at your spend and look at what does your online spend look like on a monthly, yearly basis, and are you getting that return on investment? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And do that analysis. And if you're not, like I said before, you're just blindly throwing money to the wind. And lastly, the one thing that's really hot right now with a lot of our dealers is this time to market and getting your inventory online fast. So getting your pictures and your ads online as fast as possible. We had a dealership that was over 12 days when they came to us from another provider. And with our product, they were able to get their cars online on average in 2 days. So we just gained them 10 days worth of traffic. So think about that, especially, Nick, as you said, going into the fourth quarter. We all wish we had another month of sales, right? We all wish we had one more month to sell to make our year. Well, you can make your year just by reducing that time to market. And if you're at a 45-day turn and you can lower that to a 38-day turn, just think about that. That's that's your 13th selling month across the next 12 months. You could add another 30 days into your cycle and turn your inventory one more time. So if you were able to turn your inventory one more time this year, what would that mean to your bottom line, across the board?
Excellent points to leave us with, Patrick. He's Patrick McMullen, the Vice President at Max, and the company contact information is there on the screen. Excellent job again, Patrick. We really, the dealers online, definitely appreciate the knowledge and recommendations you've shared. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.